There's a very specific kind of pain that comes from watching someone move on while you're still standing in the wreckage of what they left behind. And there's an even more specific kind of public spectacle that happens when someone chooses to process that pain on social media, during someone else's reunion, while tagging people who didn't ask to be involved. That's where we are with Joe Wenberg right now. And honestly, it's a lot to unpack. Let's start with the timing, because timing in Bravo world is never accidental. The Summer House reunion is airing. Part 1 just dropped. The dominant conversation is about Amanda Batchelor, Sierra Miller, and West Wilson, a friendship betrayal so layered and uncomfortable that it's been consuming the entire fandom. The emotional temperature of the audience is already maxed out. And right in the middle of all of that, Joe resurfaces. Not to comment on the Summer House storyline directly. Not to offer support to someone she knows, but to draw a parallel between her own history with Tom Schwartz and what Sierra went through with West Wilson. That's a choice. A very deliberate, very loaded choice. And the audience noticed immediately. Before we even get into whether the comparison holds up, let's talk about what Joe is actually saying when she makes it. She tagged Sierra in a post essentially telling her how much stronger she is, that she handled something Joe feels she couldn't. On the surface, that reads as supportive, generous, even. But there's a current running underneath it that's harder to ignore. Because in making Sierra the symbol of strength she wishes she had, Joe is simultaneously casting herself as the woman who was left devastated. And she's putting Schwartz in the frame, implicitly, explicitly, right there in the subtext, as the man responsible for that devastation. She wanted to tag him directly. She couldn't. He'd blocked her. That detail is doing so much emotional heavy lifting in this story. Because blocking someone isn't just a practical action, it's a statement. It's a closed door with a lock on it. And the fact that Joe mentioned it publicly, that she let people know she tried and was blocked, tells you something about where her head is. It's not the behavior of someone who has quietly moved on. It's the behavior of someone still knocking on a door that isn't going to open. Tom Schwartz. Here's the thing about Schwartz that makes him such a complicated figure in the Bravo universe. He doesn't read as a villain. That's always been his greatest asset and, depending on your perspective, his most frustrating quality. He moves through drama with this kind of low-key, easygoing energy that makes it genuinely difficult to pin direct blame on him even when the evidence suggests he handled something badly. He kissed Rachel Leviss. He had his thing with Joe. His marriage to Katie dissolved in real time on camera. And through all of it he maintained this persona of a guy who's a little lost, a little emotionally avoidant, but not malicious. But here's what Joe is pointing at, and it's worth taking seriously for a moment even if you think her approach is off. Emotional avoidance has consequences. When someone treats a connection as more casual than the other person experiences it, and then disappears without real closure, the damage that leaves behind isn't imaginary. It's real. And for someone like Joe, who, to be fair, was openly criticized even during her time on the show for how intensely she seemed attached, that kind of ambiguous ending without clear resolution can calcify into something that doesn't heal properly. The problem is the public forum, and the timing, and the comparison itself. Because the West Wilson and Sierra Miller situation is a specific kind of betrayal, one that reportedly involved Amanda Batchelor, Sierra's supposed best friend, entering a relationship with a man Sierra had dated, while keeping that information from her. That's a friendship betrayal. A loyalty fracture between two women who were close. There are layers of trust and intimacy being broken in multiple directions simultaneously. Whatever happened between Joe and Schwartz, and we've heard primarily Joe's version of that story, it doesn't map onto that situation in any clean way. Most people in the comments seemed to agree. And the fan response was, to put it gently, not kind. The comments ranged from blunt to dismissive to genuinely concerned. People told her to move on, to heal in private, to get support. The recurring theme wasn't cruelty, it was exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from watching someone publicly struggle with something long past its expiration date in the public eye. There's a difference between processing pain and broadcasting it, and somewhere in that difference is where the audience lost patience with Joe's narrative. But, and this is the part that deserves more than a dismissive comment section reaction, Is the audience being entirely fair? We live in a culture that loves to tell women to move on faster, to heal quieter, to perform recovery more convincingly. The moment a woman's grief or frustration becomes inconvenient or uncomfortable for the audience, the response is almost reflexive. You're being obsessive, you need help, let it go. And sometimes that's accurate and compassionate. But sometimes it's also a way of shutting down something real because it's messy and doesn't fit a neat narrative arc. Joe may be handling this badly. The comparison may be a stretch. The timing may be transparently strategic in the way that social media activation during a reunion always is. But there's something underneath all of it, a genuine injury that never got properly addressed, by Schwartz or by the show, that deserves at least a pause before the full pile-on. What does Schwartz do with all of this? That's the other question hanging in the air. His public brand right now is very much moved on, new chapter, Kiana and the Valley, and leaving the Messier Vanderpump years behind. He has every incentive to say absolutely nothing about this. And knowing Schwartz, silence is probably exactly what we'll get. He is, above all things, a person who opts out of direct confrontation. He always has been. Katie would tell you that. Joe is telling you that. It's almost his defining characteristic at this point. Not cruelty, but a kind of emotional disappearing act that leaves the other person holding all the unresolved feeling. The Valley is giving him a new audience, a new context, a softer lens. The last thing that narrative needs is a re-engagement with the Joe situation. So he'll stay blocked. He'll stay quiet. And Joe's posts will sit out there in the timeline, getting fewer likes, generating diminishing returns, until the reunion news cycle moves to something else. That's the brutal math of reality TV relevance. And yet, the fact that she keeps returning to this, keeps finding new moments to resurface, new parallels to draw, new ways to keep the story alive even as the audience grows less receptive, suggests that something in her genuinely hasn't found its resting place yet. Whether that's about Schwartz specifically or about something larger in her own emotional landscape, it's hard to say from the outside. But there's a persistent quality to it that's less about attention and more about unfinished business she can't seem to close. The real tragedy, if you want to call it that, is that this probably doesn't help her. Posting during the reunion, tagging Sierra, drawing the comparison, none of it changes what happened. None of it gets her a conversation with Schwartz. None of it produces the closure that seems to be what she's actually looking for underneath all of it. It just keeps the wound open in public, where strangers get to vote on whether her pain is proportionate. That's a rough place to be. So where does this go from here? Does Schwartz eventually feel pressure to say something, one of his typically vague, self-deprecating non-apologies that somehow manages to say nothing while sounding like it said something? Does Joe pull back and regroup, or does the reunion continuing to air provide more entry points for her to re-engage? Does anyone in either cast actually reach out to her privately, the way people keep suggesting in the comments? Probably not, honestly. This is Bravo. People don't get closure here. They get content. And sometimes the saddest stories are the ones where the person who got hurt the most ends up being the one the audience grows most impatient with. Because they stayed visible when everyone else had already moved on. Tell me where you land on this. Is Joe reaching with the West Wilson comparison? Or is there something in the parallel she's drawing that the audience is too quick to dismiss? And what do you think Schwartz actually owes anyone from that chapter of his life, if anything? I genuinely want to know what you think. Drop it below.